Good morning. I want to welcome you all here today for our panel titled Branded Entertainment Marketing Across Platforms, Leveraging Image, Content, and Celebrity. My name is David Leibowitz. I'm managing partner of CH Potomac. We have a great panel to discuss these issues. And in addition to all of you that we welcome here, we're also being webcast. So for those outside that are watching this, welcome and glad to have you joining us as well. You know, it's an interesting subject matter, branded entertainment marketing. I mean, what is branded entertainment? What's branded content? It can mean a lot of different things, and I'm going to ask everybody about what that is, but let me give you a little bit of a historical perspective on it. You know, branded content really was viewed as a way to really do advertising and to help promote products. And in fact, some of the early approaches of that were in radio. When radio started, they were looking, advertisers were trying to see how radio could be a vehicle for them, especially to reach women at home during the day. And so that was what really created the soap operas that Colgate-Palmolive and Procter & Gamble had sponsored, which then moved in the 40s to television. You also had, in fact, in 1940, 90% of all commercially sponsored daytime broadcast hours were soap operas. And it's a lot different today, but then again, we have hundreds and hundreds of channels and programming outlets, so that there's it's a whole different world in that area. But when they went not just there to go into television, but then when television started, they had some of the same challenges. So you could do straight advertising, but they were promoting and really producing and sponsoring a program. So, for example, you would have the Camel News Caravan with John Cameron Swayze. None of you were born in those days, so but you might have heard about it from your parents. The Texaco Star Theater starring Milton Berle, the GE Theater hosted by Ronald Reagan, former president, as we know. And one show that is still running today, which is now the longest running primetime series in the history of television, is the Hallmark Hall of Fame, which was Hallmark Cards. Now, there are so many different ways to be able to use branded content now to promote, whether you're promoting a program, you're promoting a product, you're promoting a service, promoting a book, a concert, a game, anything at all, as well as promoting causes. And there are new outlets from social media, so including Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube, MCN such as Fullscreen and Awesomeness. All these new outlets are providing new means for creative people to try to find ways to engage users in a way that they're going to find enjoyable, not being viewed as just pitching something to them, but really something that entertains them and maybe then transcend and have you go to what they want you to see, watch, purchase, etc. down the road. It also can be used for social messages, for causes. It's not just on the commercial side, and even in politics. So just last week, you had William Shatner, as Captain Kirk, and George Takei as Mr. Sulu went on Twitter to voice their opposition to the changes of the rollback of the FCC's net neutrality rules. It sounds like a pretty, esoteric subject, but one that's very important to a lot of people, especially in the content industries. And you also often deal with different celebrities and influences, whether they are major stars, athletes, just thinking about the old days where you would have a lot of baseball players and football players promoting shaving cream, deodorant, and the like. All the way to Joe Namath wearing stockings in one of his commercials for Noxzema. But there are challenges when you're dealing with celebrities, and we're going to get into some of that, on getting the right type of celebrity and on hopefully avoiding issues down the road in associating with yourself with them, like the problems that Subway had with Jared, or PewDiePie with Maker Studios and YouTube, although, as we discussed a little earlier, PewDiePie is making a bit of a comeback. So there is continued life in those areas. But, with that, I want to introduce the panel. We're going to go first down and introduce everybody, and then I'm going to have them speak a little bit about what they do specifically, and then we're going to get into a great discussion. So on my immediate right, on your left, is Andrew Salmson, who's Managing Director of Possible, based in Los Angeles. And next to Andrew is Allison Hoffman, who is Chief Marketing Officer for STARS. And so STARS, itself is a network. It's also a brand, and all their programs are brands. And so, they have a lot of interest in trying to make sure that people know that they're out there when you have so many programs out there and so many different outlets. And we're going to talk about how that all works. Next to Allison is Anathea Rees, who is Managing Director for Karat here in Los Angeles. And next to Anathea is Michael Bertolina, who is VP for Client Development for the Branded Entertainment Network, also known as BEN. And then we have Ty Jones, who is Senior Director of Celebrity Talent at Who Say Inc. And he's going to bring a lot of perspective on how you deal with talent and how you integrate them into different projects. And last but not least is Josh Brooks, who is Senior VP for Brand Strategy and Marketing for Jam City. So I want to, please welcome everybody here, and why don't you talk a little bit, and we'll just go down the line, what you do in your organization, as well as, what's interesting that's important to you in this space.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dave. As you mentioned, when you kind of gave that great history, things have changed a lot. I mean, even since I've been in digital for 20 years. I started a company here in LA called Schematic, which I then sold to WPP and to create Possible, which is WPP's largest digital agency. Even in the 20 years that I've been in this business, we've seen major shifts in the way people get marketed to and what is effective in marketing to them. And I think we've all kind of seen what happens when you move from just sending outgoing messages saying buy, try, and you move to saying how can we try to make a connection. So what we try to do is we blend data and emotion so that we are figuring out how can we make an emotional connection with people. If you can make an emotional connection, they will listen to you. If you can give them something that's interesting, and then figure out how to use data to then change it from getting someone's attention to getting someone to try or buy or do whatever you're trying to get them to do with your product. It's a simple concept, and in the actual activation of it, it's challenging and tricky and is really different depending on which brands we're working with.
Allison from STARS. I'm very different from a lot of people on the panel because we're a programmer. We produce content, we produce premium shows. So on the one hand, we are content that various brands are potentially looking to integrate with. On the other hand, I run marketing, and I look at everything that we put out as content. Everything that we do should be as entertaining as the shows themselves. They should connect with an audience. They should fire people up, get them excited. They can be really direct in their message, or they can sort of sit on the side of the actual content and just entertain and surprise and delight. But yeah, I would agree that marketing has changed dramatically, and the way we go to market is, looking for really authentic, organic experiences that bring people in, frankly, to the shows that we're trying to market.
So I run an office for a media agency. So we are interested in connecting consumers and brands together. And these days, anything that can form that connection between a consumer and a brand is a media channel. And often those media channels will be filled with advertising, and often they will be filled with branded content, branded entertainment, whatever you'd like to call it. And I think for me, the challenge is that we're all getting really caught up in the buzzwords of branded content and what it means and what it doesn't mean. I don't think we'll all have a different answer on that.
And I'm going to ask that question in a few moments.
Well, I won't jump ahead then.
Situation.
And I think it's important to recognise that this has been around forever. even before the soap operas. Jules Verne, in his book Around the World in, I always get this wrong, 80 days. I always say 90 days. I'm a slow driver. He was engaging with shipping companies who were wanting their brand put inside his novel. So the idea of connecting with people through means of cultural entertainment is as old as connecting with people. So I think it's more about taking a step back from what it's called, what we do with it, and more saying, what is the brand's role in forming this connection? What right do they have to deliver this content, and how can they do it in a way that's important for the people consuming it, rather than just thinking about themselves?
Michael.
Yeah. So Ben is, we're one of those connectors. We work with our brands to integrate into content that is already existing in the marketplace. So with all the challenges that have been going on with the advertising landscape, with streaming content, time-shifted viewing, we focus on getting to the heart of where people are watching, and that's the programming. So we love stars. We love working with storytellers. I lead a brand partnership team where we consult with our brands at a very early stage in creating strategies across the entertainment landscape. And it could be stars, it could be streaming OTT platforms, it could be influencer marketing. But the ultimate goal is, as you said, to connect with those cultural moments and get into the story that people are really engaged in. The other thing that we're really trying to focus on is measurement, which has been a big challenge with the brand and entertainment space, is how can you look at it, evaluate it, and know what your effective ROI is going to be in the end. So as a Bill Gates company, we put a heavy emphasis on data and making sure that we can go into things with our eyes wide open so that our clients know what the end result could potentially be, and then on the back end making sure that we measure it and learn and grow from it.
Todd.
Morning. So Who Say Inc. is a influencer marketing company. I'm the director of talent out here in LA. What we do is we create premium influencer, celebrity, tastemaker, anyone that we see fit for a specific campaign. We put those campaigns together, from smart talent casting to production to distribution at scale. We also have a ton of first-party data that we use to help distribute that media smartly, with also guaranteed impressions for the brand. So that's we talked about measurables and deliverables. We're on the hook at the end of the day for both great content that resonates with both the influencer's audience and the brand's talking points, but also delivering those metrics that the brand's looking to get.
Hi, my name is Josh Brooks. I oversee the marketing and strategy group for Jam City. Jam City is one of the largest independent mobile gaming companies that you may or may not have heard of already. 800 plus million downloads. And our games are a pretty wide range, anything from Marvel Avengers to Cookie Jam to Panda Pop to Family Guy game that came out 3 weeks ago. And our business is user acquisition, and in the user acquisition game, you got to be smart. It's all data driven. We do not make gut instincts on things. We look at everything. Everything's run through the digital sifter to understand what's working, what's not. We test the hell out of everything we do. And then when we do that, we still take chances. And by chances, I mean our group focuses on spending money in interesting ways. So whether that's outdoor media or a sponsorship of a live stream or a hookup with a celebrity that we believe that could actually connect with our audience, we do it all. We have a pretty significant marketing budget to go after and maintain our user base. So this is sort of exciting because we play in two sides. We have our own games that we publish, that we make, we wholly own. We believe these are brands and IPs that are going to stick around forever, that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And then on the other side, we do partnerships with Fox and with the Peanuts family. Sorry, the Schultz family, to do the Peanuts game, because we know that in theory, maybe we spend less money on user acquisition because it's substitutional for the value that the Peanuts brand could give us. But there's not a more sophisticated group of individuals in marketing these days, in my opinion, than the folks that are spending money on games only because every company you can think of is thinking about what's the gamification of, whether it's healthcare, entertainment, lifestyle, clothing. How do you gamify that experience? And so that's what we're doing. I need to stop talking now. Right.
So the question that you sort of raised, Anthea, I'm going to go back to here, and how would all of you define whether it's branded content or branded entertainment? By the way, if we wind up getting the same answer after the first three, the other three are gone. But we're going to start this time with Josh. So you are going to be talking again.
Yeah, okay, so branded entertainment. Okay, on the side of, I'd rather speak in specific. So a game like Family Guy, that makes perfect sense. I should be able to draft off of the brand of Family Guy. And if I'm a marketer, I need to be thinking about those integration points that I can use and abuse to elevate the status and the awareness of that game. So what can I do within our channels to market that game? Let's do a live stream with Adam West, the real life Peter Griffin, who this man exists and looks exactly like and talks like Peter Griffin. And then Ralph Garman, who's a K-Rock DJ here in LA, but we ended up streaming this show to 700,000 people on Facebook for 40 minutes. Because we did a branded integration or a brand partnership with our friends over at Fox. Those things make sense. I can draft behind the name. It makes sense for the game and the audience. On the flip side, we launched a game called Genies and Gems, and I'm looking for a marketing hook that might make sense. And so I reached out to a guy named Jesse Wellens, who is Prank vs. Prank, 10, 12 million YouTube subscribers. And this is the guy that when you went on the web and you saw a guy skateboarding through Manhattan on a genie board, I called him and said, I will pay you to do the same thing at the Game Developer Conference for the launch of my game. And instead, let me make you a bag of jewels, real jewels, games called Genies and Gems. And he was giving out slugs of silver, earrings, and necklaces to unsuspecting people in the streets. So I am drafting behind him on what his personal brand is as that skating genie guy. And so for every time we think about this stuff, again, I hate to say it, we can't be brand focused. We have to be UA focused, direct response focused. But sometimes it's fun to play in this space and just let these games have a different life in the real space.
Skating genie guy was not on the list of career counselor jobs that I got in high school.
No, it is far from. And that guy is just a massive hit at this point. Him and Casey are monsters.
So Ty, you want to pick it up?
Yeah, I think, when you talk about branded content, especially with influencers and celebs, they're so protective of, their audience and their number of subscribers, whatever you want to call them, of what they built up. So you need to be aware that when you are putting together these branded content campaigns, obviously we're going to say authentic and genuine a ton today, but that's a big part of their branding. And, they, a lot of the times too, come from a place where they feel like they've command a certain dollar amount, a certain flexibility with the creative. Obviously, they want to keep as much to their own branded voice as possible. So we kind of try to toe that line. So we involve the talent as much as possible when we're putting these creative treatments together. Because again, we do that all in house, and we want to include them as much as possible. And also talk to the brands about, listen, you want people like this, you need to, let go of a little bit of, creative control and let them do what they do best. A good example of that is we did something with Alec Baldwin a couple years ago with Chevy, and it was to promote their Best Day Ever campaign, which was kind of the opposite of April Fool's Day. They wanted to do something positive for a bunch of classrooms. They put on free concerts and a bunch of stuff like that. So we had, creative calls with him, and he's not used to doing a lot of these branded campaigns, so he wanted his voice to be heard. He's a big history buff, so he suggested that we dress him up as Abe Lincoln, and he surprised a history class at Occidental College, and he was in character and all that fun stuff. We had hidden cameras and all that, and taped reactions and all that. So that's something where we can kind of toe the line where it feels right for him. He's getting paid for it, obviously. People know he's getting paid for it, but we're still creating really impactful content that we think is genuine to both what Chevy wanted and what he wants to portray as himself as a history buff and just like a smart guy in general. So that's kind of how we toe the line between those two.
Yeah, that's great. And I mean, we play very much the same way. We always want to make sure that there's consensus between both parties, whether it's the brand or the creator, whoever it might be. Josh, I think you're right. It's always fun for us because for us, we're brand-led and solution-neutral, so we're open to pretty much anything based upon whatever our clients are looking for. So when it comes to whatever the definition of branded entertainment is, and there's a pretty broad definition there, it's just whatever really engages with your consumer. So if you're working with an auto brand that's trying to connect with moms, there's going to be a much different approach than your beer brand that's trying to connect with dudes. And we are always out trying to find that story that's going to do it the best, that storyteller who's going to do it the best in whatever format or vehicle it might be. We're open to all of it. So from our perspective, we specifically work in the integration space, which I guess would be a subset of the overall definition. But it's constantly evolving as media changes. So.
I think, as I said before, it's one of those things that there are hundreds of definitions and no definitions. It can change, and it will change all the time depending on the environment and the world we live in. I think the interesting thing is to say, branded entertainment content, one way of looking at it is brands engaging with people through things that entertain them. It could be, and you're so right, there are so many subsets. Live experiences that are brought to you by a brand is branded entertainment. Television shows can involve branded entertainment. So I think that you can argue this or debate this for as long as the day is, but one interesting way of trying to put some parameters around it is whatever it is sitting in a space that has been defined as an advertising space, or is it sitting in a space that a consumer would define as an entertainment space? So people say, well, some ads are incredibly entertaining, and they are, but they're not branded entertainment because they are designed to be interruptive. They are designed to be placed in a space that is built for advertising, is built for paid. That doesn't mean to say that you don't support branded entertainment, branded content with paid support and push it out through other channels, but if it is designed to sit in a space that is built around advertising, then it might be very entertaining advertising, but it plays a different role than sitting in a space that is the consumers would define as their entertainment space.
That's a really important distinction. It's whether it's push versus pull, really, right? Is the vehicle there just to advertise, or is the vehicle there to entertain, and is a brand supporting and empowering it?
But wouldn't the win be right in the middle?
Yeah,
The
I would-
BMW
yeah.
films of 10, 12 years ago, of like, you don't know if it's great content or if it's
I would jump
BMW.
in. I would jump in here because I'm in television, and I would say I just saw that the Game of Thrones trailer dropped, and I think people eagerly. Okay, trailer is a very traditional commercial in the TV space, but we time our trailer drops, we time our key art drops. So even these very traditional push vehicles, I think, are looked at as content by fans. I want to see what the first poster looks like. I want to see what the teaser looks like. I want to see that first footage. I want to see what the whole trailer sell and what music they use and things. And I mean, we're in a time of peak television, so I would agree with your first point, which is it's all branded content in the TV world. Whether it's you're using a traditional format or you're doing something wild and experiential, you're doing an activation, you're doing a social media stunt, you're using an influencer, it's all branded content because we are in entertainment and it is all meant to entertain. I just watched a trailer for a competitor and I just was like, there's no way this movie is as good as this trailer. This trailer is all I need to see, and I watched it 10 times, and I was like, this thing is beautiful. And so maybe that's not effective, because I really don't know if I'll see it. I don't know if I'll see the movie. I don't know if I'll subscribe to the service, but I was so entertained by the ride that 3-minute trailer took me on.
I think you're absolutely right, and you sit in a really
Particular
interesting
space.
space.
Yeah.
So I feel that part of my job is to try to help my clients to navigate. It's like you don't have the Game of Thrones trailer, so how do we differentiate between the messages that you're trying to push in this channel and the messages that you're trying to push in
Yes.
other channels? So it is
It's
interesting
different.
for all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's all such good points. From a definition standpoint, I agree. It's almost not worth defining, but I'll try to give the broadest and simplest definition I can, which is content being used to create a stronger emotional connection or reaction, right? But let's set that aside because there are a million different ways to do that. I think hearing all the different perspectives is fascinating. As a creative agency, we really sit at the center of this, right? Because we will often, work with someone like Tide Hussein, or work with different Fullscreen or different people on the influencer side, and trying to also bring in whatever ideas we think are going to work. You have both the kind of the best and also there's a privileged ability to do this with TV because people really want to see your content. And I think you get to do the best content, right? And you guys, the work that you do is amazing. I think it gets more challenging when the stuff is less or not at all sexy. And there's an interesting thing that happens where you're trying to create content that are going to get people to get excited about something that may not be inherently very exciting. And then the trick is, how do you get in the sweet spot so that they not only remember the content, but they remember the brand. And that can be really, really difficult. One example that, because I love kind of just getting the specificity of an example, for AT&T, we created this character named Owen. And what Owen's job was to try to get people to use the AT&T app instead of calling AT&T for customer service stuff. And this kind of getting people to do self-care for CRM, that's the holy grail for a lot of companies because obviously it's much, much cheaper to do self-care than it is if they're calling or getting a truck to roll out. And this was a character who basically, in the kind of silliest, goofiest way possible, taught you all the great things that you could do with your AT&T app. And so it's a matter of having it be entertaining enough that people watch it, they smile, they have that moment of surprise and delight, but also enough about the brand that people aren't like, yeah, I just saw this really cool thing, and people are like, oh, what was it an ad for? And you're like, I don't know, but the thing was so cool, right? So finding that sweet spot is really tricky and a really important part of designing any campaign.
Now, Anathea, you had told me about one campaign that, when I say a campaign, it may not even be a campaign, but it certainly wasn't sexy. And it's the idea of how to have people pay attention to something that they typically ignore when they go on an airplane. So maybe talk about that, because that's...
You might have guessed from the accent that I'm not from around here. I'm Australian and spent a lot of my life living and working in Australia and New Zealand. And one company that has done branded content incredibly well and has been mimicked a lot, in fact we were talking about that, is Air New Zealand. And some of you might have even seen the Air New Zealand safety videos. So they show at the beginning of the plane ride and no one ever looks up because you've seen it 100 times, no matter how many times they try to, ask you to. So Air New Zealand started off and have done probably 10 or 12 of these now, using different characters. Lord of the Rings was a great one, swimsuit illustrated models was another extremely popular one. And they've done this really effectively, not just on their planes, but they've pushed it out obviously into a lot of other channels. The important thing about that, though, and it is a remarkable instance of branded content, but very importantly, it reflects who they are as a brand. They have that sense of personality and realness through everything they do, through all the interactions with them, through the food they serve, the messaging that you get on their website. And that's, for me, incredibly important. You cannot do branded entertainment and be witty and funny and charming in one area of your brand and be completely different in the other. You don't need to be matchy-matchy across everything, but there has to be a realness about whatever the entertainment you're trying to put out is that connects back with who you are as a brand. Otherwise, people just don't believe it. People just don't care.
Well, I think that's brand voice, right? And I mean, we've heard almost every panelist say organic, consistency, authentic, yet no one's going to buy it if the serious brand decides to be goofy for a day.
And again, I'll stand out because we have such an array of programming. We have to be wildly different. for all of our brands. So an Outlander campaign will look, feel, and sound very different from Ash versus Evil Dead, from Power, from American Gods. And if you look at Social Voice, if you look at the kinds of trailers or content, marketing that we're doing, experiences, everything is designed to really play to who we think that qualified viewer is and that potential subscriber is, and to speak that language. But it is a challenge for networks, for television networks. Television networks are defined often by a show or two. What is your biggest show? Which one has the loudest voice, often the biggest budget? And that's the voice people hear. So I was at AMC previously, and so for a while we were Mad Men, and then we were Walking Dead. And for me now, we're in Power season right now, and Power is the voice that a lot of people hear from Starz. So it's a challenge, but we have to have that variety.
But don't you think of those as different brands? Like, don't you
They
think of
are.
it as an Outlander brand
Yes.
rather than Starz being inconsistent? I think about you being consistent for Outlander.
Yes. And then how that ladders out to Starz, which is the service you need to buy.
But you know what you said, Anthony, about being consistent and how it was for Air New Zealand? I think it was about 2 months ago I was flying, and I think it was United Airlines, but before the recent fiascos that they've had. And for their safety message, it was either them or another airline, but I think it was them. They had Katie Nolan, who's a sportscaster, a sports journalist for Fox Sports, was doing that, and it was very clever, and she's very personable. But and more than just a consistency, is it authentic or genuine to have somebody like that doing the safety message type of thing too?
Well, speaking from an integration perspective, that level of consistency is what's really important there as well, because particularly when it comes to a storyteller, you want to make sure that there's a good fit when it comes to a piece of content and a brand that's going to engage in it. So whether it's a celebrity talent that's talking to it, or if it's Ray Donovan who's going to be using a certain product, it's important that authenticity, say it again, that fit is right, and that you have buy-in from the talent, from the storyteller. We've all seen placements in shows that really, we remember the bad ones. We all remember the bad ones, the ones that just stand out and make you groan. And in those cases, it's either that it's a product that just absolutely makes no sense, or it's a complete non sequitur, or it's something that was handed down and was mandated to happen versus buy-in was created at a very early stage. There's education, there's collaboration, and ultimately there's empowerment of a storyteller to do it in their own voice. Once you can create that level of fit, things play out very smoothly.
I love what you say about remembering the bad ones, because there's so many just terrible,
Yeah.
groan-inducing things that I remember. I also think you remember in a good way, the things that are original.
Yeah.
I mean, the first time anyone ever saw an airline safety video that was new and different and wacky and fun, which I think was for Virgin, if I remember
Yes,
correctly.
yeah.
You were like, holy shit, this is changed the category. This is the best thing I've ever seen in my life. This is going to be the greatest flight ever. When you saw the 12th one, you were like, yep, you're doing it too, and I guess it's better than just having someone stand there, but what's going to be your take on the trope?
Yeah.
So being original really helps.
Michael, where you were going with that, and another consideration I would think is context. So, for example, we were talking before, and we won't necessarily discuss the particular ad, but let's say there's a murder scene, and behind the murder scene there is drink Pepsi-Cola or something. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not going to really help.
No.
And there are real instances of having context that makes no sense.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, if it's not advancing the narrative, if it's not bringing anything to the table, then it shouldn't be there at all. In my previous life, I was a prop master, where I worked on properties, and I would hand people their watches and do guns and gags and things. And our saying was, if no one notices it, you did your job really well. And that should really be the case. Not that you don't want to bury a brand, But if it works in seamlessly into a story, you're not going to be called out as being inauthentic or that shoehorn moment. It's going to be something that feels like it's really a part of the story.
And that can be really hard for marketers to deal with, because we have clients who are saying, I'm spending all this money, I want to be part of that story,
Right.
but I need to make sure that you mention the 4 doors that do XYZ and the 17 drink holders. And that's when it starts to become a real challenge. And I think if marketers can't understand that they are the facilitator rather than the reason for the content, then they should step away from it, because it becomes shoehorned and it becomes something that people just feel really sort of ick about.
Yeah, the art versus commerce
Yes.
conversation is always a big one, because, and again, I sit on both sides of it. So, because we have content, I can look at things and say, oh, why would you put that in this show? It's not a good fit. But as a marketer, I feel that pain, because when I partner with somebody to do an integrated effort, I want more control than I probably should have for it to really be great. And there is a balance between surrendering some control so that it is artistic and it lands, but also making sure that you're protecting the property that you're trying to market, and knowing that you're responsible for protecting that property.
Yeah, filmmaking is innately a collaborative process, and there are a lot of stakeholders, and it's really hard to get clients to understand the collaborative nature of being in that environment, working with a transportation coordinator, a director of photography, a director, and everyone down the line all have a position on exactly what you're doing here. So yes, I hear you. It's a big challenge. I think it takes a lot of education and practice.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say one question that I don't like getting, and it's actually gotten better, but when we first started out in this influencer marketing, was how much does so-and-so cost? It's like, if you start off on that foot, you're like, okay, well, you're just looking for X amount of followers, you're not looking at engagement, you're not looking at that brand authenticity with that person or the audience. You're just saying, okay, I want to be cool, put me, with that person. So I think there's been a lot more education since then, a lot more metrics you can look at on what works and what doesn't. We do think there is, at Who Say, a mix between, we kind of said art and commerce, we say art and science, where we have the data behind why this person would work with this brand and for this particular campaign, but also we have a lot of data behind that on their audience, on what they've done, and also what the brand's audience is hungry for.
I just, on the influencer side, I was just thinking about, I listen to Howard Stern a lot on my drive, and I love Howard, and I think it's really interesting to hear when Howard's really passionate from an authentic place about something, and he'll go on. But then he does these reads, the sort of live reads and everything, and you can sort of hear it in his voice. It's like, I'm being paid to do this. Now I remember it, but I don't know that it really compels action on my part, as a listener. And we think about that a lot.
I think, digital really gives you the tools to solve that problem of like, I want my logo bigger, I want you to tell everybody about the 18 cup holders. And the way that we try to do that, and I talk a lot about this idea of data and emotion coming together. If you will often have brands say, this piece of content doesn't talk enough about the brand, it needs to talk more about the brand. And we often have conversations, as you guys I'm sure do all the time, of if we talk too much about the brand, they're not going to share it, they're not going to watch it, right? So what do? You make it much less about the brand, and then you are able to figure out who has seen it and then retarget them based on everybody, whatever demographics you're looking for, right? Whatever the kind of desired audience is. And once you know that, you can start to move them down the line where the first piece is just a content story. And then you can retarget them with something that's like a callback to that content story with a mention of the brand. And then the next piece down is to say, okay, well, here's a mention of the brand with perhaps a call to action to eventually download the product, go to the site, what have you. But you have to kind of walk them through the process of dating. You can't just kind of say like, go buy it. No one will ever share that content.
So if I could just chime in. Sure. One of the problems when we talk bad stories or bad experiences, and everyone likes to hear those ones too because they're a little bit more, you can learn something from that. This influencer world and marketing stuff has become commoditized in a way that I can give you one great example when it works and when it doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, when I go after late 30s tech mom bloggers who love to talk about technology and new games, and I go after 10 of them and I give them a wad of cash for 2 months and go to town, and they put up videos and they put up content, and then at the end of the day, on 2 months and 1 day, I see another video that goes up and she's saying, oh my God, I love going on road trips because we travel with my family all the time, but I don't go anywhere without my Prestone. And I'm like, oh God, I just got so had. And that's the challenge for me, is that these people take money, and it's a rinse and repeat kind of scenario. And so when that happens, you're donezo, and it doesn't work. People know quickly. And so you don't ask, how much is it for John Smith or Jane Smith?
Yeah.
You as the marketer say, look, I need Jane Smith to go, stand upside down, drink water, blow a whistle, and move to Zambia for a year. Can that person do this? Great, if that's the case. 'Cause if you go just cookie cutter, standard process stuff, nothing is going to happen.
Yeah.
This isn't a one-size-fits-all business.
Yeah, and
No
I think
way.
that speaks to, one of at least our field, we rebranded around fandom about a year ago, because I think, and we feel this way, is, you can't market anything that you don't feel really passionate about yourself. So even in my teams, people are staffed according to the shows they love, and our agencies are staffed according to really connecting with the content. There'll be times we say, well, you don't dig this the way you need to dig this to put the right plan together for this show. We're gonna save it for stuff that you really care about. And I think when people are not really passionate, when they don't really feel it, people can discern that in a moment. So we take a lot of time along the entire chain and with all of our partners to make sure there's true passion, and that's how we do our best work. And when we don't do that, that's where you can see it. It just sort of falls flat. You're like, we didn't really get any lift. People didn't engage. It just sort of dissolved out there.
Yeah, that's a really important point, and it's actually something that we do at Ben on the influencer side. Budget's important. You need to know what we have to work with financially, but ultimately what we'll do is we go through the right fit, who looks right, but then we engage with a list of folks and we'll find out who is really truly passionate about this. We have to vet those passion levels first.
Yeah.
Otherwise you end up with that mid-roll read that is just,
Yeah.
it's so obvious and
Yeah.
it's painful to hear. The
Yeah.
whole point of going to them is so that you can have their voice connecting to their audience in a way that is natural.
Right.
If it's just a read, they're shilling.
Yeah.
So speaking of shilling, and maybe it's not really shilling, but I want to go back to what, Josh, you were talking about, the example a few moments ago, and let's assume that influencer came from Ty's shop. What sort of conversation would you have with Ty about that? Would it turn you off to the agency versus just the individual? Are there contractual ways that you could have sort of exclusivity within categories, or that they can't do anything even outside of certain categories within a 30-day window? Or how much of that, gets done? And Ty, you should talk about that too.
Yep.
I think it really depends on the type of program. We did a thing with Cookie Jam and Dr. Ken. We locked up Dr. Ken because we were a mobile game, and I don't want him out there marketing other games. That's foolish for me as a company. When we talk about one-off promotions with social talent, you're going to want them in a period of time that they're going to be sort of exclusive to you. But I also make these people play the games and understand that if you don't show me that you're on level 20 whatever, so you understand the fundamental of what you're doing, you're never going to connect. And that requires, everyone wants to get paid for all this stuff, and I get it. It's a new revenue stream for them, and it's their time. It is not I honestly couldn't say that there's a playbook that we pull out every time and say, let's do this page 22 again, because that worked. It's almost like as years go on, there's a new platform. What was once me spending money on Vine, obviously Vine doesn't even exist anymore, let alone would I ever want to have a talent work on that. So I think you know, a company like ours, Jam City, we're interestingly positioned because we're a technology company based in Los Angeles with entertainment roots. So we understand how to navigate, how to pick up the phone and usually talk to the manager or the agent or the representative at Husay or whoever it may be and understand what our needs are and then just come to them with realistic things. Here's the expectations. We want to do X, Y, and Z. The one thing I will say is that when I hired Ralph Garman, the radio show host, to do the Family Guy live Facebook thing, and why that was cool is because he is a massive Family Guy nerd who knows more about that show. And so at any point in time, if there was a hint of it getting slow, I had, you know, the king of the nerds being able to sort of recite stories of episode 11 from season whatever. Like, that's what's genius. So I'll say it because everyone else has said it. It's authentic.
And the good MCNs do that research, but you also have to do it on your own to make sure you're really going back to make sure that influencer hasn't said something that was like really offensive or heavy towards another brand or feel like they shill, or, you know, we had one where a post that we did from an influencer, not from Ty, was the post before they were wearing this like incredibly offensive shirt that I kind of can't say what it said on it, and we were like, and you know, it's really hard. You got to do your due diligence.
Yeah, and our day-to-day, it's, you know, it's knowing that talent, you know, combing through their socials, any press they've done, projects they've done. That's a big part of it. It's also just having relationships just on our end. And that's kind of my day-to-day too, is just combing through, you know, managers, agents, publicists, whatever I need to figure out, you know, what really resonates. We keep talking about authenticity and being genuine, and what is this person really into? Does this person actually, you know, like doing is this person actually a rock climber and they actually want to use these, you know, random equipment things, even though they're an actor? You wouldn't think they would usually do that. Like, we have that pop up a lot. And then also to another point with exclusivity, that's another sticking point that we try to at least meet in the middle, you know, on that. The brand obviously wants that person to be set in stone for that. That's going to be my person, because they're thinking of it almost as a spokesperson. Whereas you're a content creator, you obviously don't want to be boxed out of things, other opportunities, and you feel like your window that you've posted that content, that branded content, is just for that time being, you know, for whatever it is, a few days, a week, or something like that. That's that prime, you know, spike, and when people are going to look at that stuff anyway. And then after that, you're good. Like, you put your content in there, and your fans also know too. Like, okay, yeah, they liked, you know, that shoe or that brand, but now, you know, maybe a few months later or something like that, oh, they like this one. That feels right, because they're going to tell me in their own voice why this is actually really good and why I like this, and that is going to resonate more with the fans than saying, oh, I like Coke. Well, now I like Pepsi. Well, now I like this. You know, without any storytelling involved with it.
I think the influencers are a really interesting group of people, because the reason they are famous is because they connect with their audience, versus an actor who is famous because they are acting. And I once had a group of clients and a group of YouTubers, and I said, one of the clients asked a YouTuber, how much of your content is branded content and how much of it is your content? And I thought, oh, I can't wait to hear the answer, really interesting question. And the YouTuber kind of looked at the client and went, I don't understand the question. It's all my content. And it was really eye-opening to this group of clients to say, if a good, authentic YouTuber or influencer chooses to work with your brand and they do it in a way that's real for them, it's exactly as you say. I like these shoes and I like these shoes. That's okay, because I'm a normal human. I don't just like one brand. So I think it's that side of things, and again, that's sometimes hard for marketers and the clients we work with to differentiate.
Yeah, it takes a little bit of a leap of faith, because like that point of consensus I was talking about earlier, it's particularly apt when it comes to influencers, because ultimately what we provide as brands is we empower it, and we give them our talking points, and we give them our parameters. Please don't go here, but please do it in a way that do you. Yeah, exactly. You go ahead and do it. And that's them. That's their content. They're going to go ahead and they're going to create it, and one influencer is going to be much different than another influencer if you're doing it as a campaign. But that's a challenge again. You know, like I'm not scripting it. I'm not telling you exactly what to say, but please represent us well.
We had a situation, not an influencer, but we worked with Funny or Die with one of our actors, Bruce Campbell, who's the lead in Ash vs. Evil Dead, and we tried to develop a sketch together for the previous season, and it did not work, and we sort of scrapped it. And then last season, we just handed it to them. And it worked, and it was funny, and it got great response and everything like that. And I think that was a real, even being in the business we're in, which it should be very natural to know that you have to let storytellers do their thing, you have to let comedians do their thing, and if you try to overmanage the process, it's not going to work. Even for us, we had to learn it the hard way and see something not work, scrap it, and then finally hand it over to see it be successful. And it's very hard to do. It's very hard to do as a marketer.
Speaking of Funny or Die, there is a series that actually their first season just ended last week named Brockmire, which is on IFC, and Funny or Die produced it. It's Hank Azaria playing an old-time baseball broadcaster. And it's a great series. I encourage you to watch it. But he also, in the show, it's sponsored in part by Samuel Adams Beer. And so in character, he does a commercial, that's within the show. When I say within, it's not part of the subject matter. It's clearly sort of a commercial, but in character and foul language, and it's extraordinarily entertaining. But would you consider that sort of a commercial, or when someone stays in character like that? Or is it just, on its own, it's pretty funny.
Was it in the show or was it out of the show?
Well, it's not part of the storyline, but it's at a commercial break. They would have one commercial, then he would be back as doing his Samuel Adams in character, and then go back to the storyline of the show. It's clearly separated out as a commercial spot.
Yeah, I think it's a commercial, but it sounds like a really good one.
Yeah.
And we did a series of beer commercials for one of our shows, for a fake beer that existed in one of our shows. And
Hank Azaria?
Yeah, we know, actually, Bruce Campbell again. But yeah, he did a series of beer commercials, and we ran them, and we put media behind them, and it was a little bit of an experiment for us, but it was really fun and entertaining.
I'll tell you a great test is were people sharing it. If people share it, it tends to pass that
Engagement scores.
This
and
is content. And by the way, sometimes regular old 30-second spots get shared, and those really become content for the brands as well.
And not just the ones for Super Bowl. Right. Another program where was a natural integration was, or still is, I guess, Jerry Seinfeld's Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee with Lexus, and it's sort of still an outside spot, and the cars are not Lexus cars in it. They're all famous and antique cars or what have you. But that works really nicely. That's more of a comment than a question. But I want to go back to Michael. You were talking about the collaborative aspects of this. There are media agencies, there are content agencies, there are brands. And we have a number of all different types up here. Let's say either it could be Allison and Josh, with your brands, your games, and your programs, have a discussion with, Anathea on the media agency side, on the content side with Michael and Andrew, and then Ty, and maybe you bring some celebrity or influencer in. How would those discussions sort of go? And we have 5 minutes. Where would you begin who would lead the discussion? Would it be initially first the brand, and whether it's the game or
I think real quick, I would say Allison and I would write out bullet points of what we're thinking to do. And we have an original idea. We think that and it's a series of ideas. And you write out some simple concepts, and then you share that with a creative agency or an execution agency. That's funny. And at that point, then you start playing the game, and you riff with these people because, in theory, those people are either smarter than you, or more knowledgeable, or can riff with you. But it is your rim. It's Stars. It's Jam City Games. We're going to know more than you guys. Sorry, that is what we
always.
do. Yeah. That is what we live and breathe, right? But I think that process goes quickly to an agency point where you want to see if you're on the same level, and you start learning. And there's nothing better than being pleasantly surprised by agency work and content that's being pumped out that says that's the voice that we're looking for.
And when you're working with an agency on a regular basis, if they're worth their salt, they'll bring you some of those ideas, right? And say, well, we have this idea. And sometimes you'll say, you know what, good, but I don't think quite us for these reasons. And sometimes you'll say, wow, that could really work, right? So it can really go so many different directions. The agency could bring in the Husseys of the world. The brand could say, we've had great luck with Hussey, let's try to partner with them. I don't think there's any set playbook.
I think and I think to echo all of these points, I think the collaborations that work best are when your agency really mind melds with you as the client. And so, for instance, like, it's ridiculous for an agency to pitch ideas to me if they haven't watched the show and watched every episode in every season.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot, and you know, it just, you get these ideas that don't make any sense. So a lot of times, you know, you'll start as the client with an idea, and the agency, good agencies, will make it better. They'll steer it in the right direction. They'll find you the right partnerships who get you and get what you're trying to accomplish, and then it's sort of a dance from there. I think would be.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, everything starts with the brand, the client. I mean, like I said, we're brand-led and solution neutral, so everything that we do starts with those brand goals and those brand challenges. And our job is to solve those with whatever that solution might be. And so we start by diving deep. And if it is a collaborative experience, if we need media and we work with the media agency as well, it's hands across agencies at that point. But we just got to make sure that our end goal is coming up with results.
And I think that sorry, Alison, but I think that's a really important thing to consider with whatever agencies you're talking to, is what are the KPIs around this? Because one of the big things that I think is an absolute disservice to branded content, branded entertainment in any of its formats, is expecting it to do something it's not designed to do. So you have other channels to drive awareness or drive an action. Branded content is there to create engagement, shareability, love. It's not necessarily going to go particularly well against a 30-second TVC for some of the other metrics. And I feel it's really important from our perspective as a media agency to help our clients understand what channels and what content in those channels will deliver the results they want. Because I have so many times over my long career seen clients dismiss branded content because we tried that and sales didn't go up X percentage. It's not there to do that. It is part of an ecosystem where you are connecting with your consumers across a whole range of channels and different content will do different things. I think that's incredibly important.
There are new technologies, new platforms that, you know, are emerging. Amazon Echo, which now has various offspring or sides to them now in that area. Virtual reality, which is a lot of the subject matter of digital Hollywood, and it's been around for a few years, but you know, how those and augmented reality, how do you try to apply or incorporate these new technologies in some of the efforts that you do? And how close do you try to stay on top of what's going on out there in terms of new technologies, new platforms, and the like?
We do a lot of that kind of newer cutting-edge platform work, and I think keeping on top of it is an important part. There's a lot of stuff that's going to come along that people use just to use. If you're really doing something for the first time, you can get some real value from doing that, but oftentimes people use it to kind of, again, shoehorn it in. I'll tell you a great example, not done by us, but I really liked it, is for not a very successful or very good movie, Batman vs. Superman. There was a very early Alexa skill called the Wayne investigation. And you could enable it and tell Alexa to open the Wayne investigation. And it was this really long kind of branching narrative, choose your own adventure, almost kind of radio play. And my kids started doing it, and they were doing it over and over again, and I thought, okay, this is really good. It's like great, subtle, easy to produce content. So that stuff is out there, and again, if it works for your brand, and I think entertainment properties are particularly good for something like voice assistants, it can be really valuable. it also has the challenges we've been talking a lot about today, which is if it doesn't feel authentic, if it doesn't feel right, no one's going to do it, and those who do are going to feel like it's a big shill.
Any other comments there? No?
I think you look at it and you look at it both sides. One, who's using it, how are they using it, and what are they using it for? What's the content that they're listening to or going to watch because of that? And then the other side is it affecting our ability to tell stories in new ways? Is it creating new opportunities for storytelling? So we look at everything. Obviously, if there's some new technology, we're always going to pay attention to that. But we have to look at those two endpoints, those two touch points, how the consumer is engaged with it and what creative can pass through that.
No, Anathea, you had told me about an example in Korea with virtual reality. Maybe you might want to share that.
If you guys aren't aware of North Face in South Korea, go and Google them, have a look on YouTube at the stuff they do. They do incredible content based off real life experiences. So there's one in particular, I'm not actually going to ruin it because I hope people go and see it online. But what they do is they create a real life experience for a small number of people, and when you see that they've done 4 or 5 of them, when you see them you'll understand that only a few hundred, maybe 1,000 people could actually have this experience, but then they turn it into amazing content that gets watched by millions and millions of people. Now the important thing, going back to that point about KPIs, I don't watch one of those videos and run out and buy a jacket, but what it does is I love the brand. I think the brand is fantastic. I think they're clever, they're witty, they're obviously a brand that's right for me for all of those, because I'm clever and witty and all those things. So then when I do want to buy a jacket, they're automatically, when I see an ad that's saying there is a 10% off sale or a 20% off sale, come in now, it's wintertime, they're going to be higher on my list. So I'm not judging the content, the original piece of content, by its sales ability. I'm judging it by what it does for the brand. But definitely have a look at North Face South Korea.
So brand association, goodwill.
consideration,
That's
it
what
sounds
it's
like,
there
yeah.
for. That's
Sort of Red Bull of all the content that they put out there.
Yeah, and I would, not to be negative, but I think there are also a lot of VR or 360 experiences that maybe you look at and experience and you go, why did they do this? Why am I turning around in this room?
Yeah.
And why is this really interesting? And maybe there are 3
Why do
people
I feel
out.
a little sick to my stomach?
Yeah, so I think it's using the platform or the new technology in a compelling way, and I think whenever there's narrative involved, it's going to be better and stronger for an audience than just looking around at something.
I'll say real quickly, I think it's about consumer expectation. These days, I think consumers, for instance, when they play games, they want it to look better. They expect it to look better. They expect a more rich story about the game and the characters in the game, let's say. And maybe that was different than when you were playing, Brick Breaker on your BlackBerry 9 years ago. Now there's these deep-rooted stories that feel like, geez, I was so used to this stuff years ago when I was watching TV or whatever it is. Now it's on games.
Yeah.
And then from a technology perspective, look at the Pokemon Go stuff from Niantic a year ago that came out. That blew everybody out of the water because what it did, it blended those worlds together. And so that's, when you talk about new things that are coming, it's incremental, it's small little steps. I can't imagine huge steps over the next, call it, year and a half. But boy, those little small ones are going to make people change the way they experience content on, first and foremost, this thing, which everyone has in their pocket. And that's what's fascinating. So double down on all things mobile.
Well, we're going to turn to questions in a couple of moments. Speaking of the pocket, when I asked that previous question, first I then thought about, in the AOL days and how they had different personalities say, "You've got mail." And a few months back, Waze had a celebrity voice. I forget his name, but the host of NBC Dateline was giving the directions, which was very interesting, but they didn't have the same depth of detail on the street names, the road names, and so it was good to, at least for my own usage of it, it was amusing to use for a few times, but then I wanted to get more granular in the directions and left that. That's just an anecdote. But let me turn to the audience, unless someone wanted to comment on any of that, but if not.
Yeah, no,
I still use Boy Band, just so you know.
I love it.
That's the easiest one.
Waze has been doing that for years, and It's exactly that. You're like, Stephen Colbert is telling me where to go, but not very well, because of course they didn't have Stephen Colbert record the name of every street in America, oddly. So, I think that stuff is a good quick hit. Maybe it'll make you think about Dateline or, Colbert. But it doesn't last.
Yeah, I was gonna agree completely. In our world, we're like, it's cute. Yeah, we could do it. It's cute, but it's sort of. I think you really want to go big or go home. You want to really do it well. If it's been done, you want to do it really, really well.
Right.
If it's new to market, you get excited and go, how do we be the first to do this?
Right.
Do it really well.
If you had someone giving you ways, directions from The Walking Dead, and during the directions they were like telling you a story about like the zombies that were coming up behind you, like that would be cool. Like that would be really interesting and scary.
I don't think I'd want to be a passenger in that car, though. We're going to turn to questions, and please tell us your name and where you're from, too. And first, the young lady in the back there.
Hi there, I'm Rose and I'm from UCLA, and I wondered how the panel is perhaps advising or implementing the guidelines for ADA compliance in these new mediums, in the like VR. I mean, AR is in some senses has a lot of applicability to helping those who need accessibility aids, but I'm wondering how to tackle the concept of VR and making that accessible for people who are sight impaired, hearing impaired. And are you dealing with this? Is this forefront? Because there are lawsuits going around and things like that. Against your clients or yourselves, if you're not compliant. So how are you tackling that?
That's such a tough question. I gotta say, it has not yet come up with a single client, but hearing you say that makes me think it probably will.
I guess everyone agrees it's a tough question.
I think you do see, not specifically with ADA, compliance or anything like that, but you do see how people consume content. You look at a Facebook video, there's going to be, subtitles on that because no one's listening to it, but they're watching it, that kind of thing. So obviously, I think, the technology is there at scale to do it if you need to be compliant or, work on those things. But yeah, it hasn't been brought up, for the most part.
And to Ty's point, on the kind of standard platforms, that has been like a well understood issue for many years. But you're bringing it up on like voice assistants and AR, VR, and yeah, that I haven't seen.
Right.
Another question? The gentleman in the front here.
Hi, my name's Nathan, and I own a brand. And Allison, when you were talking a little bit about how Bruce did a series of beer commercials.
Yes, Shemp's beer.
I was curious, where do you see that going? As a brand owner, like I see the opportunity to work with content creators to do those type of synergies together. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious what
Yeah, I mean, the fan base for Ash versus Evil Dead is just incredibly passionate. They love, the history. They love the current show. We did it for the fans. And so the primary platform was social media, and then it got picked up in a variety of places. But I think, much to the North Face example, I think we just wanted to engage with them with sort of an inside wink and say, let's film a series of Shemp's beer commercials because this is what Ash drinks. And we find it funny and we think it's hilarious and fun and we think our audience will as well. And, hopefully, I guess in terms of a KPI, that deepens engagement with the series and with the property.
would you ever consider like actually white labeling a beer and then merchandising that?
Yeah, now I am.
Dunder Mifflin. Don't forget, Dunder Mifflin was sold at Staples as paper
Yes.
and all that stuff. I mean, that was one of the better examples of when it goes the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Totally well, and kudos to you guys because sure, when you do something like that, it feels like you're kind of preaching to the converted, and then when it's cool and successful, then it goes into the mainstream, and then people who've never heard of the show suddenly hear about it. So it's great.
First, the woman in the back row, and then the next to the last row, but we'll get to both of you there. Can you say who you are, please, and what you're associated with?
You talked about innovation. Would any of you be willing to try a new platform that's never been launched before? Or do you wait to see how it works out with somebody else?
We're always willing to look at something new as long as it suits our clients' needs. So we would want to probably test something and see how effective it is. But again, everything that we're going to do is going to be led by whether it fits the brief, essentially.
Yeah, we've had many firsts, and but also many things that we've chosen not to go with.
And if I could say, sometimes it's just hard, because if you happen to develop a ad serving technology for mediation and you're trying to convince me to throw it in my app, and it's a piece of technology that will conflict with whatever else I'm doing within all the other SDKs that are currently in my product, I would probably say, until you have a case study and a proven sort of experience example, I can't do it, you know? But that's highly technical stuff. But if you're talking about something more content driven, where maybe the touch points of affecting the end product is less, probably different answer.
I think we see that there is, even if it's not a proven platform, product or feature, there can be value, there can be PR value to being first to market, and that's something that we weigh. We love being first to market, but it is a calculated conversation, a calculated risk. And probably, I would say from a Star's perspective, we probably do it more with new features and new product offerings with known platforms. Is probably what we do more than brand new, entrants.
It also requires a lot of education, where you have to touch a lot of different points to get people to do it, including not just the brand and the integrators, but also if there is any talent involved, and having them understand what it's all about, and then having to deal with their managers. It could be a lengthy process that often doesn't get done, just because people are more familiar with things that they know to do that. But I'm not trying to discourage you, but it has some challenges associated with doing that.
Yeah, if you would have pitched, Facebook Live or something like that to a celebrity in their team, just a few years ago, they'd be like, no, we're not putting my client live, in front of the world right now. That's just not going to happen in an uncontrolled space. So it just depends from the brand down to the talent and their team too. Yeah.
I don't know if I agree though, because if Facebook says they're doing it, it's sort of like, okay, I don't mind being a guinea pig. We do ad products with Google all the time. Playable ad units, we were the first people to do that. When Snapchat came out and we started talking to them, we want to be the first playable snap to install game. I'll take that risk. It's calculated because it's Facebook.
But that's Facebook and that's Snapchat
right.
versus a new company, a new technology.
Well, and I appreciate what Ty is saying too with talent. I mean, you want to protect people, there's businesses to protect talent. So putting them live, to America, there was risk involved in doing that.
Accepted, but yeah.
We're going to have that question, and hopefully we'll still have time for you as well.
In the climate that we're in now, do you see a rise in cost marketing as it relates to branded content? Do those conversations come up, and is there any, if they do, is there any extra focus on authenticity and trying to ensure that, the Pepsi commercial kind of fiasco doesn't happen, and how they can actually truly integrate themselves into what people care about?
Certainly when we're targeting millennials, that's always in the conversation, because for all the heat that kind of group of people takes for the things that are less exciting, less fun about them, they're really cause-oriented. As much as the Pepsi commercial was a disaster, and boy was it a disaster, you saw Heineken just a week or two later come out with a really beautiful, you could say, kind of alternate version where they were getting people with very different opinions to talk to each other over a beer and actually get somewhere. So, it's not that was a terrible idea that Pepsi could help people come together. It was a terrible execution.
Gentleman over there.
Yeah, my name's Sean O'Malley. I'm a data analytics consultant. But I heard everyone on the panel say that they look at the data and they look at the metrics, and that's how they make a decision, particularly Allison and Josh. So for the TV data, what are the 2 or 3 go-to sources? Is it Nielsen? Is it Rentrak? What kind of data do you listen to when saying, Josh, for the game? What are the platforms that you have?
I can say real quick, you take download information, because we can know where people are downloading our games, pair that with where those spots ran. You can run an analysis pretty easily on attribution to understand when, where, how. In Los Angeles, there's a company called Conversion Logic that is one of those in-between companies that helps you with that stuff. Fantastic sort of methodology to understanding when you spend money, how do you actually get results from it. TV, I don't necessarily use, I wouldn't use a Nielsen number for my business, but we do have data scientists and machine learning guys that are building sort of products internally to understand when games are getting downloaded and they're coming from these particular sources, radio, TV, non-digital. They're a little bit more finicky because you can't really tell. Is it coming in the first 5 minutes, that download? Is it coming in an hour? And everyone's got an attribution window that's different.
Yeah, yeah. I think because there are different legs to my business. There's the subscription piece, which is the ultimate goal. You know, we're a subscription service, so it's the attribution sources that you mentioned. Yes, Nielsen comes in from a viewership perspective in RentTrack and all of those great Samba TV, all those great data sources on the viewership side, which is more for us. We're not selling ads, so it's more about engagement and usage, which we care about. And then there's buzz and all of the social media metrics, because being a part of the conversation is critical in the whole attribution funnel and acquisition funnel. So I think those are the buckets that we look at from a data perspective. But I will say, you know, you're very, very science driven. I think we are as well. But it is a mix of art and science in terms of marketing. It's definitely a mix for us.
Well, Allison, I think you have the last word, at least on this panel. Please join me in thanking the panelists and thank all of you for being here and participating as well. Have a great day and enjoy the rest of the